He is one of the fiercest champions for Medicare for all. Abdul El-Sayed is a physician, an epidemiologist, and a public servant. He's also running for U.S. Senate in Michigan. He's endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, and he is running on a working class platform, but he is here today in an individual capacity to talk about these Trump cuts and Medicare for all. Everybody welcome Abdul El-Sayed.
Jay, it's a privilege to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm grateful to be here to talk about one of the most important issues facing everyday Americans, in particular in Michigan, which is the crisis that is unfolding because of rising premiums and the risk that people face because of things like deductibles and out-of-pocket costs in the form of co-pays and co-insurance.
Yeah. And so this is a subject in which you are an expert. What is your take on these ACA cuts?
I mean, devastating. You can imagine you're in a situation right now where you're facing the impossible situation where you're watching your premiums go up, possibly quadruple. And for a lot of families, that is going to price them out of health insurance. We live in a society where healthcare is way too expensive, and not being able to have health insurance means that if something catastrophic were to happen to you or your family, you wouldn't be able to afford it. You potentially would have to go to an emergency room, not get the follow-up care you need, and still get hit by bills that'll put you into bankruptcy. It's wrong. It shouldn't happen in the richest, most powerful country in the world. And we could avoid it if we had the political will to do something about it. My colleague, Dr. Micah Johnson, and I wrote this book because every time you talk about Medicare for all, a bunch of serious looking people who are profoundly unserious in their actual approach to governance will tell you, oh, this is not a serious idea. You can't possibly get it done. No, you can't get it done. It's just that we don't want to get it done because there's a lot of money to be made by corporations who sit on the other side of not getting it done.
Yep. And it seems that the GOP wants to make all these cuts, which is essentially what they do, because they seem to just hate poor people. But I mean, they don't seem to have a solution. They say this is radical, it's socialist. Is this completely a radical idea that comes out of nowhere? Is Medicare for all a crazy, radical new idea?
What's crazy is leaving people vulnerable in a moment when the prices of healthcare are so goddamn high. That's crazy. It's radical in the highest income, richest, most powerful country in the world to leave people adrift without the healthcare that they need and deserve, facing the risk of illness or catastrophe. That's radical. And you can see that because we're the only high income country in the world that does not guarantee health coverage to its people. Like, it's a pretty crazy thing. And they gaslight us into thinking that somehow this is normal because this is the experience that most of us have been stuck with our entire lives. It's not radical to think that we, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, could actually guarantee everybody healthcare, bring down our prices, and address the scourge of medical debt, which, by the way, is $225 billion. That is more than the GDP of half of the United States, half of the states in this country. So what is radical is continuing forward and thinking that somehow this is sustainable or that this is not affecting everyday people. What's radical is failing to act when there is a obvious approach that we could be taking here. And I'll tell you, more and more U.S. senators are starting to get wise to this. We just saw a couple of days ago that Chris Van Hollen, who's a leader out of Maryland, an incredible senator, been heroic fundamentally on the foreign policy front, signed on to the Medicare for All bill. Folks are realizing that this is the way that we have to solve our problems and that we all better get on to recognizing that right now there are too many people at risk, there are too many lives at stake, and we have to act.
Yeah, absolutely. So people hear about Medicare for all. They think, oh, well, what about having a public option as well? Some kind of hybrid. Just tell us a little bit about how does it work for people who don't really understand what Medicare for all is. How does it work? Why can other countries do this and not us? So we talk about being the greatest country in the world, and yet somehow every other industrial nation has figured out how to provide universal health care except for us. So what is Medicare for all fundamentally for people who don't really understand?
Well, we have Medicare, and Medicare is a government operated and funded health insurance program for seniors and people with certain disabilities. Now, Medicare has certain gaps, and what we're proposing under Medicare for All is that we would cover those gaps. We would make Medicare far more generous, and then we would extend it to everybody. If you like your private insurance through your employer or your union, you can keep it, but Medicare becomes a baseline, a default, a guarantee that is there for you your entire life, from the day that you're born to the day that you turn 26 to the day that you get a job, the day that you lose a job, the day you get married, day you get divorced, the day you turn 65. It is there for you at baseline. It covers you for access to healthcare that you need and deserve, and it empowers you. And there's some really important aspects to the way that it works that help to address other secondary problems. Not just that there are people who don't get the care, but that our healthcare is way too expensive and it's getting more expensive by the day. What Medicare for All would do is, because it would be the purchaser of the vast quantity of healthcare in this country, it operates what's called a monopsony, which is a fancy way of saying the opposite of a monopoly, which is when there's one seller of something. A monopsony is when there's one buyer of something. And if there's one buyer, they get to set the price, which means that Medicare can negotiate on our behalf and drop the prices of everything from prescription drugs to hospital stays to clinical visits, right? And then beyond that, it also addresses the games that are played between hospitals and healthcare systems and health insurers to increase the prices of care on us, and to negotiate sweetheart deals between them that leave them consolidating our system and packing out both patients and providers. So Medicare for All does all of these things by operating one government health program for everyone that you can build off of if you want to, but that's a default for everybody. Now, this is not the same as a public option, right? A public option is just that. It's an option that is run by the government. That does not automatically cover everybody. It does not automatically create a monopsony that reduces prices. It does not create more efficiencies in the system. It's just one government option. And a lot of times what you hear for folks who talk about the public option, what you hear in between the lines is that they're more worried about getting hit by corporations and corporate spending against them, because they are standing up against the ways that corporate health insurance have dominated our healthcare system for way too long.
Which
For
is, by
those
the
of us
way,
who,
one of the biggest lobbyists. They spend some of the most amount on lobbying both parties, which is
you're
crazy.
right.
And speaking to that point, we're also seeing the Democratic Party leadership really strongly resist overwhelmingly working class policies and platforms. You saw how they resisted Mamdani's platform. You see how they're coming out to undermine Graham Plattner. So how do you see this affecting your campaign?
I'm the only person in my race who hasn't taken corporate money, and I'm also the only one running on Medicare for All. Those two things are not a coincidence. I'm just not afraid of their spending, because I know that when you are armed with the truth and you are willing to full-throatedly advocate for it, that voters will take your back, and they will have your back because they know that you have their best interest at heart. It's not my first time running in Michigan. I ran 8 years ago for governor, and I was saying the same things then as I'm saying now, that we need to guarantee healthcare in the richest, most powerful country in the world, that we need to get money out of politics, that we need to build an economy that isn't beholden to huge corporations, but that it empowers unions and small businesses to build high quality jobs. One job should be enough. And that's going to mean that all of these special interests, corporate interests, our local utilities, the health insurance corporations, the pharmaceutical corporations, APAC, are probably going to come for my throat. But at the same time, I am relying on everyday people who know I'm advocating for them to have my back. And I think we can win an election. And frankly, I'll just say this. If you cannot win an election saying what is right, I would rather not win an election and do things that are not consistent what I think people need and deserve. What is the point of the job if it's not the work?
Well, I think Mamdani proved this in New York. You can run on on working class platform, working class issues, trying to make life affordable and livable for working class people. It doesn't have to be this way, so that executives can have a new jet, right? So I know you have to go to your big rally with Senator Sanders tonight. Thank you for creating time for us. But any last words on why you're running, or your leadership in this time as we're facing one of the most polarized times in our lifetime? And what is your message to the people?
We need leaders right now who are willing to fight back, but also know what they're fighting for. I know exactly what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting it for an America where people can afford the basic dignities of their lives, in America where we come together to solve our problems rather than get torn apart, and in America where you don't have to worry about where you're going to get health care, about whether or not your corporate job is going to offshore or automate, in America where you are not worried about a corporation getting better deals than you. And if you believe in that kind of America, I hope that folks will get involved and be a part of our race. You can go to abdulforsenate.com. You can follow me on all the socials. We're out there having the conversations that I think most of you listening wish politicians were having in communities like Michigan. This is the kind of race that is going to define where we go from here. Michigan is the crossroads of American politics. And these ideas can win, right? These ideas have won. And I think we need to show that they are the way forward for our country if we're serious about addressing the big challenges we face right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. There seems to be this idea in, Democratic consultant circles that the solution to Trump extremism is, well, we need to become more like them. If you can't beat them, join them. Let's move to the center. When really Trump has run and win, and MAGA has won on the most extreme possible sort of destructive populism. And I think we're proving, Mamdani and others are proving that it's really about getting back to kitchen table working class issues, getting the money out of politics. So thank you, Abdul. Thank you for your leadership. Want to wish you the best of luck, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.